Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. So in this session, I'm going to discuss about translation. I'm starting the translation topic. So here this we will divide the topic into two sessions. In the first session, I'm going to discuss about what are all the requirements of translation. What is required for process of translation to take place. So you know that translation is the process of synthesis of protein from mRNA, and translation takes place in cytoplasm. So whatever codons are present on mRNA, whatever mRNA carries the message from DNA, they have to be translated, decoded into proteins. This takes place in cytoplasm. So for translation to take place, there are some requirements. So let us see, first I have listed down what are all requirements. mRNA is required, rRNA, tRNA is required, ribosomes, amino acids, enzymes, ATP and GTP, energy molecules, specific activators. These are all required for process of translation. Now in this session, I am going to discuss one by one in detail about all these different factors, especially with respect to structures of mRNA, rRNA, tRNA and ribosomes. So these we are going to discuss the structures first. So first we will start with mRNA, that is called as messenger RNA. Why it is called messenger RNA? Because it carries message from nucleus to cytoplasm. It is synthesized in nucleus by process of transcription and then it is transferred to cytoplasm. That's why it is called as a messenger RNA. And its nature as messenger RNA, it was named by Jacob and Monod. The two scientists, Jacob and Monod, they named messenger RNA. And this RNA constitutes about 5 to 10% of total RNA. And its molecular weight is 5 into 10 to the power of 5 Daltons. That is the molecular weight. And this is a single-stranded linear molecule. Another feature is it is a single-stranded and linear molecule. Straight. Linear means it is a straight molecule, unfolded or a linear molecule, and it is synthesized with the help of antisense strand of DNA. I just mentioned the antisense strand of DNA will synthesize mRNA by the process of transcription. And what is the enzyme required here? Enzyme is named as DNA dependent RNA polymerase. It is called DNA dependent RNA polymerase, or this is also called as transcriptase. Because this is involved in transcription, it is called as a transcriptase. Now this molecule is an ephemeral molecule. That means its lifespan is very less. It is a short-lived molecule, or its lifespan is very less. It is about only 2 minutes in case of prokaryotes. That means every 2 minutes it has to be synthesized, and it is about very few hours to 1 day. Few hours to 1 day in case of eukaryotes. So within that time it performs its function. Then another new molecule will be synthesized. And how does it carry the genetic information? It is a linear molecule which is present in this form 5' to 3' direction. Already we discussed it carries the genetic information in a group of 3 nucleotides, and each one is called as a codon, which is a group of 3 nucleotides. Each codon will represent an amino acid. And there are 64 codons total are formed. Out of that, 61 are called as sense codons. and remaining 3 are called as a nonsense codons, or they are called terminating codons. So this all already we have discussed. And there is an initiating codon which is located towards the 5' end. So towards 5' end we find an initiating codon AUG, which codes for the amino acid methionine. And towards 3' end there is another codon, stop codon, which brings about the process of termination of the process of protein synthesis. So this is what is the mRNA. Now I'll give you the diagrams of the structures of mRNA which are actually take part in the process of translation in case of prokaryotes and in case of eukaryotes. So let us see first what is the structure of mRNA. First, in case of prokaryotes. Let us see in case of prokaryotes what are all the sequences and structures. So suppose this is a single strand, this is 5' end and 3' end, and towards the 5' end, just near the 5' end, in case of prokaryotes, there is a sequence present which is named as SD sequence. I'll tell you what is this SD sequence. SD stands for Shine Dalgarno, after the two scientists. It is called as a Shine Dalgarno sequence. This is found on mRNA of prokaryotes, and the sequence is AGG, AGG and U. That means there are about 7 nucleotides present, and this sequence will be complementary. Suppose this sequence is present on mRNA, a complementary sequence will be present which is called anti-Shine Dalgarno. ASD means anti-Shine Dalgarno. This sequence is present on the ribosome. It is present in ribosome, that is smaller subunit. In prokaryotes, smaller subunit is 16S rRNA. So in the smaller subunit of ribosome, complementary to this sequence is present. That is called as anti-Shine Dalgarno sequence. Now what is its importance is this SD, ASD, both are complementary, Shine Dalgarno, anti-Shine Dalgarno. This will help in association of mRNA with smaller subunit. It helps in association of mRNA and smaller subunit. During the process of translation, that is during initiation process, these two will be associated because of this sequences present. That is the first sequence present in prokaryotes, then followed by AUG, which is initiating codon, AUG. Then any other sequence, then there will be, last will be any of the stop codons, say UAE. In between, it is called as a coding region. So any other codons are also present. So this is mRNA of prokaryotes, or mRNA we can also call it as a translation unit. Just like we call DNA as transcription unit, this is called as a translation unit. Now let us see in case of eukaryotes. Now let us see in case of eukaryotes what is the structure or the sequence present. Eukaryotic mRNA is little more complicated. So here we find, say this is 5' and 3' end, 5' and 3'. Towards the just near the 5' end, we find this is a, this region, this is called as a cap region. It is called as a cap region. And just after that, after the cap region, we find another sequence called as, it is called as UTR. First UTR, UTR1. UTR1 is first untranslated region, and then followed by the initiating codon called as AUG. And after AUG, any other codons can be present. And then there is a stop codon, any of the stop codon like UAG. And another UTR region is present, which is called as second UTR region. Second UTR region. First UTR, that is untranslated region. UTR stands for untranslated region. Followed by the last, there will be a poly A tail. So towards 3' end, this is called as a tail. And towards 5' end, this is called as cap. Cap, you know, it is 7-methyl guanosine triphosphate. That is called as a cap. And untranslated regions are very important for efficient translation to take place. Capping also helps in initiation of translation. So this is structure of mRNA in case of prokaryotes and eukaryotes. Now let us see the next one molecule, that is rRNA. rRNA, or this is called as a ribosomal RNA. rRNA, or it is called as ribosomal RNA. And ribosomal RNA is most abundant RNA. It is most abundant RNA. It constitutes about 80% of total RNA. So it is most abundant RNA. It is also the most stable RNA. It is most abundant RNA, and also it is the most stable, most abundant and most stable RNA. And it is also synthesized similarly by the process of transcription, and it is the constituent of ribosomes. It is the main structure of ribosomes. It forms the structure of ribosomes, and it has a molecular weight. It has a molecular weight of about, it is a very heavy molecule, molecular weight of about 10 lakh Daltons. It comes to about 10 to the power of 6 Daltons. 10 to the power of 6 Daltons. That is the rRNA. Now, since it is forming the structure of ribosomes, its main role in translation is formation of peptide bond. Formation of a peptide bond, because it is forming the ribosome. That is about rRNA. Now let us see the structure of tRNA. Okay, little bit, one more point I have to tell you about rRNA. rRNA is a linear molecule. Sorry, it is not a linear molecule. Not a linear molecule. It exists in the form of pseudohelix. Pseudohelix. It is a single-stranded. It is a single-stranded, but it is not a linear molecule. It exists as a pseudohelix. What is pseudohelix? Pseudohelix is the single strand itself. Suppose this is a single strand. Itself coils in such a way that it can form a helix-like structure. It is the single strand. So one side we call it as a 5', the other one is 3'. And wherever, if they are close, they may form a complementary pairing. If the nitrogen bases are close enough, they form a complementary pairing. So they form a pseudohelix, and complementary base pairs may be present. Base pairs. complementary base pairs are present. Complementary base pairs are present. This is about rRNA. Now, let us now discuss about tRNA structure. tRNA, or it is called as a transfer RNA, tRNA, or transfer RNA. It is also called as a adapter RNA, adapter RNA. I'll give you the reason why it is by different names. It is also called as a soluble RNA. Three names. It is called as a tRNA or transfer RNA because it carries the amino acids for protein synthesis from cytoplasm to mRNA. Adapter RNA because the amino acids get attached to tRNA. Soluble RNA, it is soluble in sodium chloride. So since it is soluble in sodium chloride, it is also called as a soluble RNA. And this RNA is single-stranded and it constitutes about, this is a single-stranded RNA, single-stranded, and constitutes about only 10 to 15% of total RNA. It is not abundant, it is least abundant. Least abundant will be mRNA, then comes the tRNA. Most abundant is rRNA. And this is about only, it consists of about 75 to 80 nucleotides. It is also the smallest RNA, 75 to 80 nucleotides. It is also the light in weight, 25,000 Daltons. That is the molecular weight. Molecular weight is only 25,000 Daltons. And it carries the amino acids. Amino acids can get attached to that and then they are carried. Now, there are various models proposed for understanding the structure of tRNA, and the most accepted model which is proposed is called as a clover leaf model. It is called as a clover leaf model. Clover leaf model proposed by, it is proposed by Hawley. Clover leaf model is proposed by Hawley, who proposed clover leaf model to explain the structure. So, according to this is the clover leaf model is considered as the secondary structure. Secondary structure. So, for understanding purpose, it is the secondary structure which is taken to understand. There is a tertiary structure also. That after completing this, in the end I am going to give you what is the tertiary structure. Primary structure is just a linear molecule. If it is a linear tRNA, it will not perform any function. A tRNA can perform its function only in the tertiary structure. Secondary structure is for understanding. So let us see what is the clover leaf model of tRNA molecule. So here first I'll give you the diagram and then we will see what are all the important features. So here I'll give you the diagram of clover leaf model. Students, when you are watching the video, you should draw along with me and then try to understand the structure of tRNA. So, it is a linear molecule. There will be a 5' end and there will be a 3' end. And it is folded in such a way that this is going to produce 3 arms. These are the 3 arms. So, first we'll label the arm. This is called as a T5C loop. And this is called as a DHU loop. And this is the anticodon end. This is called as an anticodon end. This anticodon will be complementary to the codon which is present on mRNA. This 5' end is terminated with G. G is present, guanosine is present. And towards 3' end, towards 5 prime end, there will be G is present, guanosine is present. Towards 3 prime end, there will be an unpaired nucleotides called CCA. And this is 3 prime end is amino acid attachment end. This is called as amino acid attachment end because amino acid will get attached at this end. Now, the other two ends, this is also called as a T loop. It is also called as T loop. T loop. It is also called as a T loop, and this T5C stands for, T actually stands for ribothiamidine. Ribothiamidine and pseudouridine 5. This is called as actually 5, PHAI, with the symbol phi also, and psi also it is called ribothiamidine. This is called pseudouridine, and C stands for cytidine. These are all modified bases which are present at this end. They are modified bases present at this end. So this end has about 7 unpaired bases. 7 bases which are unpaired. Unpaired bases which form a loop. This is called as a T loop. Now this side it is called as dihydrouridine. This is also called as a D loop, or DHU stands for dihydrouridine. This is also a modified base. And anticodon end consists of also a modified base which is called as inosine. Inosine is a modified base towards anticodon. So these are all modified bases which help in functioning of tRNA. Now let us see what are the functions of this tRNA. And this small loop, this is called as an extra arm. This extra arm has no specific function. Now if we take one loop at a time, first if we take the CC end, already I mentioned amino acid attachment end, anticodon with inosine group, it gets modified. So let us see what is the function. Anticodon helps in identification of a particular amino acid, identification of specific amino acid, and binds to codon of mRNA. And this inosine helps in binding even to any non-complementary base. That is what we discussed in Wobble hypothesis. So based on the structure, Crick explained Wobble hypothesis. Inosine modification towards anticodon helps in binding to any other non-complementary bases. For this you should refer to the Wobble hypothesis we just discussed in the previous session. Now D loop or dihydrouridine loop. This will be called as enzyme recognition loop, enzyme recognition end, or enzyme recognition loop. It recognizes the enzyme required for translation. That is, the enzyme required is amino acyl synthetase enzyme. This enzyme is required for translation. Now that is the function of D loop. Now the function of T loop. Or it is also called as a T5C loop, or here this is the ribosome recognition end. It is the ribosome recognition end. This ribosome recognition end will help in identifying a particular subunit. Subunit, mainly larger subunit. Larger subunit is identified during initiation process to complete the process. By attachment of smaller and larger subunit, the process is completed. So this helps in identification of particular subunit of ribosome. So these are all the modified bases, and this is called as the secondary structure. So once again, if I say the secondary structure has, what are all it has? It has mainly 3 loops, 1 extra arm and 1 tail end. This is called as a tail end. Total 5 arms are present with 1 tail end and 3 loops and 1 extra arm. Anticodon and CCA are present opposite to each other, and the other 2 D loop and T loop are found right angles to this anticodon end. So this secondary structure is for understanding purpose, and after secondary structure the tRNA gets further modified to form a tertiary structure. So tertiary structure of tRNA is called as, it is an L-shaped structure. L-shaped. Actually it is called as inverted L-shaped structure. Inverted L-shape. Inverted L-shaped structure. So how does this inverted L-shaped structure look? So in inverted L shape, the D and T loop will come together. D and T loop will come together at one point of the L, and the remaining 2 ends will be free. D and T loop will come together and the remaining 2 ends will be free. That is what is called as a L-shaped structure. So in L-shaped structure, how it appears would be D and T loop. When we keep this D and T loop together, so say suppose this is a D loop coming, and similarly this is a T which is coming. Say this is a D loop and this is a T loop. They are folded in such a way. Corners of the L you find D and T loop. Then the other end you find, this is CCA end, other end, and this side you find anticodon end. So this anticodon end and CCA end, these two will be free. So this is the functional structure, L-shaped structure, or this is the functional structure. So tRNA can perform its function after assuming L-shaped structure. What is L-shape? It is a tertiary structure or functional structure. So that is about what is a tRNA. So now next, after tRNA, so we have just completed the 3 types of RNAs required for translation. Now next requirement, we are discussing the requirements. So our next requirement we will discuss is about what are ribosomes. Ribosomes. Let us discuss about ribosomes. So ribosomes are they are considered to be the seat for, ribosomes are seat for protein synthesis. Seat for protein synthesis. That means on the surface of ribosome, we find protein synthesis is taking place on the surface of ribosome. And it is considered to be a protein factory also. Ribosomes are also called as a protein factory. Ribosomes are synthesized with the help of nucleolus. Nucleolus synthesizes ribosomes. So, nucleolus is called as ribosomal factory. Nucleolus is ribosomal factory and ribosomes are called as protein factory. Now, these ribosomes are made up of ribonucleoprotein. Their composition is they are made up of ribonucleoprotein particles. These are called as ribonucleoprotein particles, which were identified first by the scientist Palade. Thus way these are also called Palade granules. They are also smallest. They are smallest cell organelles. They are present cell organelles within another cell organelles. They are given different names. And so these ribosomes, which are ribonucleoproteins, that means ribosomes consists of, what is their composition? Ribosomes are made up of, composition is they consist of RNA and proteins. Ribonucleic acid, RNA and proteins. These are the two main components present in ribosomes. Now let us see what is the composition just in tabular form or in a flowchart form. What is the composition of ribosomes in case of prokaryotes and in eukaryotes? Now let us see first in case of prokaryotes. In prokaryotes, you know, in prokaryotes, the ribosomes are of 70S type. 70S type. And these ribosomes, 70S type, will have two subunits. Smaller subunit which is called as a 30S. Larger subunit is called as a 50S. Now 30S subunit will have rRNA called 16S rRNA. And 50S subunit will have the rRNA called 23S rRNA and 5S rRNA. There are two types of rRNAs present in larger subunit. Smaller subunit has only one type of rRNA. Now, the smaller subunit has proteins. About 21 proteins are present. And larger subunit will have about 32 proteins. So total number of proteins present here, we find how many? Total 53 proteins are present. This is in case of prokaryotes. Two types of RNA are three types of RNA. Three types of RNA. Now next if we take eukaryotes, eukaryotes will have 80S type of ribosomes. Eukaryotes will have 80S type of ribosomes. So this 80S type of ribosomes will have two subunits. The two subunits of 80S are 40 and 60S type. And 40S type will have rRNA called 18S rRNA. And 60S will have 28S rRNA and 5.8S rRNA and also 5S rRNA. So three types of rRNA are present in larger subunit. One type in smaller subunit. So total types of rRNA are here 4 types of rRNA are present. Now the type of proteins or number of proteins present here, 18S will have about 30 proteins. 18S will have about 30 proteins and 60S will have about 50 proteins. So total number of proteins here will be about 80 proteins. This is the composition of ribosomes. Now the two subunits of ribosomes, they are always, the two subunits always are separated from each other, and the two subunits can come together only if there is a protein synthesis. Only during translation process the two subunits will come together. So what is required for two subunits to come together? So two subunits associate during translation, two subunits associate during translation in presence of magnesium ions. Magnesium ion is required for their association and a specific concentration, that is 0.001 molar concentration. So this specific concentration is required for association of these two subunits, and then they come together to perform the process of translation. This is what is about the ribosomes. The next requirement after ribosomes is we will see about amino acids and enzymes. So first we will see what is an amino acid and how is it functioning. So next requirement for translation is amino acid. You know, amino acid has one carboxylic group and one amino group, and there is a variable R group and hydrogen. So this is the general structure of a amino acid, and the R can it can vary from one amino acid to the other, and peptide bond formation takes place between the two amino acids, adjacent amino acids, between carboxylic group of one amino acid and amino group of the next amino acid. So for peptide bond formation, let us see, suppose this is the first amino acid. So carboxylic group of first amino acid, let us represent this as R1, carboxylic group of first amino acid, and second amino acid, let us take R2, and here we will take amino group, carboxylic group, because always first amino acid, carboxylic group will participate in bond formation. Carboxylic group will participate in bond formation. So this is R1, which is first amino acid, and R2 is the second amino acid. Now, now for peptide bond formation, it takes place between carboxylic group of first and amino group of the second. So here there will be a loss of OH group, and here there will be loss of one hydrogen, -1 hydrogen. So in the process, when the bond formation is taking place, there will be loss of one water molecule, and bond is formed between C and N. So after the bond formation, let us see how it looks after bond formation. This is NH2, and here there will be C, and this is the first amino acid, that is R1. And let me write the second also here, the bond formation. So here this is COOH, and here there is H, and here I am going to write N, and here this is the second amino acid, R2. Now the bond formation will take place between first and the second amino acid. So what is required here for bond formation? Between C and N. So between C and N, when there is a bond formation taking place, so peptide bond is formed between these two, C and N. That is called as a peptide bond. And with peptide bond, there is a loss of water molecule. There is a loss of water molecule. So one peptide bond, there is one loss of water molecule. So this we will label as peptide bond. Now let us satisfy the other bonds also. So here we will write O here with a double bond, and here N should have 3. So there will be an H here. So this is how, with loss of water molecule, there will be a peptide bond formation. Similarly, if many amino acids, when they are joined, the second one will join with the third, and so on. This is what is the how amino acid will function. Now, next, after amino acid, the next requirement is what are all the enzymes required here. Enzymes. Enzymes, mainly three types of enzymes are required here. So, three types of enzymes. So, a number already before I start, I will tell you amino acid number already you know 20 amino acids they participate in the process of translation. Though many can be present, but 20 amino acids they participate in translation. Okay. Now let us come back to what are all the enzymes required for translation. So first enzyme required, I am giving you in sequence amino acyl synthetase enzyme. Amino acyl synthetase enzyme. What exactly is the function and all we will be discussing in the next part of translation. Second enzyme required is called as a peptidyl transferase. Peptidyl transferase. Peptidyl transferase. Third enzyme required is called as translocase. So these three are the main enzymes which are required for translation. Lastly, I think other requirement we will list down. ATP and GTP are also required, energy molecules. They are required in different stages of translation, all different steps in translation. That's what we will do in the coming video. So activation step they are required. They are required in initiation, and the energy molecule is also required for elongation. So energy is required here. Then the other requirement we listed are the specific activators. These are the protein molecules which are required for the translation to continue, activating the process. Initiation they are required, these are called as initiation factors. So these are the factors which are required, proteins. They are called initiation factors. Similarly, in elongation they are required, so they are called elongation factors. Termination also they are required, and these are called termination factors. These are the specific proteins which are required for translation process to take place. I think this is we have come to the end of the video, end of this session. So in this session I just discussed about what are all the requirements for translation, and next session we will actually go into the process of translation. I hope it is very clear, children. If you have any doubts, definitely you can give me in my comment box. I will be going through that and try to clarify those doubts. And those who are watching my video for the first time, this is very important statement. You must please subscribe my channel so that any other upload, any other video I am going to upload, you are going to see it immediately. You have to also press the bell icon, bell symbol given there. Why I am giving you, I am mentioning this is my only aim is to reach the maximum number of students and then help them in their NEET preparation. So that's all for now, students. Thank you very much. Have a good day.